The quiet mind. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the transparent aluminum dome of Nereth Prime's central market. Ylira adjusted her hood, keeping her distinctive lavender skin hidden as she arranged salvaged quantum circuits on her modest display table. The Kytherian Empire had hunted her people for centuries, coveting their empathic abilities while simultaneously fearing them. Now, only scattered survivors like herself remained, living as ghosts among the bustling trade stations. The market thrummed with psychic noise, a cacophony of thoughts, emotions, and intentions from hundreds of beings. Human traders calculating profit margins, Zeltharian merchants concealing defective goods, Morgana children begging for sweets. Ylira had learned to filter most of it out, creating mental barriers that allowed her to function in such crowded spaces. But when the small creature stumbled through the market's eastern entrance, dragging one hind leg, something made her blood freeze. Not its appearance. It looked harmless enough, covered in soft grey fur with large, innocent eyes that seemed to plead for help. No, what terrified her was the absolute silence where its mind should be. Oh, look at the poor thing. A human woman rushed forward, her emotions radiating maternal concern. It's hurt. Children began gathering around the creature, their excitement building as they pointed and whispered. Vendors abandoned their stalls to get a closer look. Even the usually suspicious Korthak security guards seemed charmed by the small beings. Pitiful whimpering. Ylira's empathic senses screamed warnings that her logical mind struggled to interpret. Every living creature produced some form of psychic resonance, thoughts, emotions, even basic survival instincts. Plants hummed with simple awareness. Bacteria pulsed with microscopic purpose. But this creature was a void, a mental black hole that somehow projected the perfect image of vulnerability. Wait, she called out, rising from her stall. Don't touch it. But her voice was lost in the growing crowd. A Terran child, no more than 8 years old, knelt down and extended his hand toward the creature's head. The moment his fingers made contact, Ylira felt a subtle shift in the psychic atmosphere. Like the moment before a storm breaks, the creature's eyes seemed to brighten for just an instant, and she caught the faintest echo of something vast and hungry stirring beneath its fabricated innocence. This wasn't just any weapon. It was something designed specifically to exploit compassion, to use kindness as a vector for destruction. Her fingers instinctively moved to the small pendant hidden beneath her clothing, a piece of Kytherian biotechnology that had been passed down through generations. If she was right about what this creature truly was, she would need every advantage her heritage could provide. The question was whether she could act quickly enough to prevent whatever catastrophe was about to unfold, and whether anyone would believe the warnings of a seemingly ordinary scrap dealer. The hunt was beginning, and this time, her people's gifts might be the only thing standing between Nereth Prime and annihilation. The first pulse. The crowd pressed closer around the creature, their collective warmth and goodwill creating exactly the conditions it needed. Ylira pushed through the gathering traders, her empathic abilities allowing her to navigate by reading their emotional states rather than fighting through the physical press of bodies. Please, everyone step back, she shouted, but Captain Jorik Voss of the merchant vessel Stellar Wanderer was already kneeling beside the creature, his weathered hands checking for injuries. Easy there, little one, Voss murmured, his gruff exterior melting as the creature nuzzled against his palm. We'll get you sorted out. That's when it happened. The first pulse. A subtle wave of energy rippled outward from the creature, invisible to most but blazingly obvious to Ylira's enhanced senses. She watched in horror as the wave passed through the crowd, and immediately electronic devices began to malfunction. Holographic advertisements flickered and died. Personal communicators emitted bursts of static. The quantum scales used by merchants began displaying impossible negative masses, but worse than the technological failures were the effects on the people themselves. Ylira could feel their thoughts becoming increasingly muddled, their emotional states shifting from curiosity to a strange, dreamy euphoria. The creature wasn't just scrambling electronics, it was scrambling minds. The lights, whispered Zanara, a young Zeltharian trader whose usual sharp business acumen had dissolved into childlike wonder. They are so beautiful. Ylira followed her gaze upward and saw that the market's standard illumination now appeared to pulse with rainbow patterns. That definitely weren't their moments before. The creature was inducing hallucinations, making the crowd see and feel things that would keep them docile and compliant. She reached for a pendant, a crystalline device that her grandmother had called a truth lens, one of the few pieces of Kytherian technology that could pierce through psychic illusions. As she activated it, the false beauty around her fell away like discarded veils, revealing the creature's true nature. Its fur rippled with barely contained energy, and beneath the surface she could see a network of organic circuits pulsing with malevolent purpose. Most terrifying of all, she could now detect its target, Captain Voss himself. The creature was moving toward him with deliberate intent, its systems reading something in his genetic makeup or neural patterns that marked him as significant. "Captain, move away from it," she yelled, drawing stares from the crowd. But Voss was completely entranced, stroking the creature's head as it began to emit a soft, hypnotic humming. Ylira realized with growing dread that this wasn't a random attack. Someone had sent this weapon specifically to Nereth Prime, specifically to target individuals like Voss. But why a merchant captain? What made him worth deploying such sophisticated biotechnology? The creature's humming grew louder, and she felt its systems preparing for a second, more powerful pulse. Whatever it was designed to do, the preliminary phase was nearly complete. She had perhaps 30 seconds before it moved to the next stage of its programming, and she was the only person in the entire market who understood what was really happening. Her fingers tightened around the truth lens as she prepared to reveal her heritage to save them all. The revelation Ylira knew she had seconds before the creature's next phase activated. The truth lens in her palm grew warm as she channeled her Kytherian abilities through it, pushing her consciousness outward to probe the weapon's core systems. What she found there made her stumble backward in shock. The creature wasn't just a weapon, it was a highly sophisticated assassination tool, programmed with detailed information about its target. And as she delved deeper into its artificial mind, she saw Captain Voss's face in its memory banks, along with shipping manifests, route information, and classified cargo details. Voss wasn't just any merchant. He was carrying something that someone desperately wanted to remain hidden. "The creature is not what it appears," she shouted, dropping her hood and revealing her distinctive Kytherian features to the crowd. Gasps rippled through the gathered traders as they recognized her species, some with fear, others with wonder. "A Kytherian," breathed Merchant Lord Hadrius Kane, the most powerful trader on Nereth Prime. "I thought your kind were extinct." "Not yet," Ylira replied grimly, her golden eyes fixed on the creature as it began to glow more intensely. "But we will be if I can't stop this thing. It's a bioweapon, designed to look harmless while it targets specific individuals." The creature's humming reached a crescendo, and Captain Voss suddenly convulsed, his eyes rolling back as neural disruptors fired directly into his brain through his hands where they touched the weapon. The crowd screamed and tried to pull away. But their hallucination-addled minds couldn't coordinate their movements properly. Ylira activated her pendant fully, feeling the ancient Kytherian technology interface with her empathic abilities. The truth lens projected a field of psychic clarity, cutting through the creature's mental fog like a blade through silk. Suddenly, everyone in the immediate area could see the weapon for what it truly was, a writhing mass of organic circuits and neural interfaces, beautiful and terrible in its alien design. "My God," whispered Voss, his clarity returning just as the creature prepared to inject him with what appeared to be some form of biotoxin. "It's trying to, it's in my head. There's something it wants from me." "What are you carrying, Captain?" Ylira demanded, maintaining her psychic shield while the creature's programming began to adapt to her interference. "What's in your cargo hold that's worth deploying a Nexus Hound for?" Voss's face went pale. "How do you know about Nexus Hounds?" "That's classified Imperial technology. Because I helped design the countermeasures when my people were still fighting." "The Empire," she replied, pouring more energy into her defenses as the creature began to sprout additional appendages, revealing its true combat form. "Now tell me what you're carrying before this thing kills everyone in the market." The creature let out a sound like breaking glass mixed with dying stars, and Ylira felt its systems preparing for a massive psychic assault that would reduce everyone within 50 meters to drooling vegetables. She had one chance to stop it. But doing so would require her to drop every pretense and reveal abilities that the Empire had tried to exterminate for good reason. Around them, the market's emergency systems finally activated as the electronic interference spread, but it was too late for conventional responses. This was now a battle between ancient Kytherian empathic warfare and Imperial biotechnology, with the lives of hundreds of innocent traders hanging in the balance. The hidden cargo data cores, Voss gasped as the creature's toxin began coursing through his system. Kytherian data cores from the Sanctuary Archive. I was hired to transport them to collectors. Ylira's heart nearly stopped. The Sanctuary Archive had been her people's most sacred repository of knowledge, cultural memories, empathic techniques, and most importantly, the locations of remaining Kytherian survivors scattered across the galaxy. If those data cores fell into the wrong hands, her entire species could be hunted down and eliminated within a generation. Who hired you? She demanded, but the creature was already adapting to her countermeasures. Its organic circuits rewrote themselves in real time, developing new attack vectors that bypassed her psychic shields. She could feel it probing her own mind now, recognizing her as the greater threat. The Nexus Hound abandoned its harmless disguise completely, revealing its true form, a writhing mass of biomechanical tentacles surrounding a core processor that pulsed with stolen Kytherian neural patterns. It had been grown using tissue samples from her people, making it partially immune to their empathic abilities. Hadrius, Voss whispered, blood trickling from his eyes as the toxin worked. Merchant Lord Kane. He said collectors wanted Kytherian artifacts for research. Ylira spun to face Kane, who had quietly backed away from the crowd during the chaos. The truth lens revealed his true emotional state, not shock or fear, but cold calculation and barely contained excitement. He had been waiting for this moment. You. She breathed. You're working with the Empire. Kane smiled, producing a small control device from his robes. The Empire pays very well for information about surviving Kytherians, especially ones foolish enough to reveal themselves in public. He activated the device and the Nexus Hound's behavior changed immediately. Instead of focusing solely on Voss, it turned its attention to Ylira, its sensory array analyzing her empathic signature and comparing it to Imperial databases. Target confirmed, the creature spoke in a voice like grinding metal. Kytherian survivor, designation priority 1. Initiating capture protocol. The crowd scattered as the Nexus Hound launched itself toward her, its biomechanical limbs extending to ensnare rather than kill. The Empire wanted her alive, her abilities, her knowledge, her genetic material for creating more weapons like this one. Ylira reached deeper into her pendant systems, accessing functions that her grandmother had warned her to use only in the most desperate circumstances. The truth lens wasn't just a defensive tool, it was also a key to awakening the dormant Kytherian technology scattered throughout the galaxy, including the fail-safes built into her people's data cores. You want the archive, she called out to Kane as energy began building around her. Then you can have it, all of it. She pressed her palm against the pendant's core and felt her consciousness expand across space, touching every piece of Kytherian technology within range. The data cores in Voss's ship responded first, their security protocols recognizing her genetic signature. But there were other things hidden in the market, fragments of technology that refugees had carried, pieces of equipment that traders had unknowingly purchased as curiosities. All of it began to sing in harmony with her empathic abilities, creating a resonance that the Nexus Hound couldn't counter. For the first time in centuries, Kytherian technology was awakening across Nereth Prime, and with it came the accumulated fury of a dying species. The creature froze mid-attack as competing signals overwhelmed its processing centers, and Ylira smiled grimly as she prepared to show the Empire exactly why her people had been so feared. The price of survival. The awakened Kytherian technology created a feedback loop that spread throughout Nereth Prime systems, turning the entire station into a massive empathic amplifier. Ylira stood at the center of it, her consciousness expanded beyond anything she had ever experienced, touching the minds of every living being on the station. The Nexus Hound writhed in agony as conflicting programming tore through its organic circuits. The Imperial bioweapon had been designed to hunt individual Kytherians, not to face the coordinated response of an entire network of their technology. Sparks flew from its neural interfaces as safety protocols that had been dormant for decades suddenly activated. Impossible, Kane breathed, his control device sparking and dying in his hands. The Empire said your people were broken, scattered. How are you doing this? We were never broken, Ylira replied, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the station's communication systems. We were waiting. She could feel the data cores in Voss's ship opening their deepest archives. Centuries of hidden knowledge flowing through the network. But more importantly, she could sense other Kytherians, dozens of them hidden throughout the sector, their own pendant keys responding to her signal. They had survived, scattered but not destroyed, and now they knew they were not alone. The Nexus Hound made one final attempt to complete its mission, launching itself at her with desperate fury. But the creature's own stolen Kytherian genetics became its downfall as the network reprogrammed its neural patterns, turning its predatory instincts back on itself. It collapsed in a heap of sparking biotechnology, its artificial mind finally quiet. Captain Voss struggled to his feet, the creature's toxins neutralized by medical nanites that Ylira had awakened in the station's emergency systems. The cause, he gasped. I never knew what they really contained. Kane told me they were just cultural artifacts. They are, Ylira said, her consciousness slowly withdrawing back into her own body as the network settled into a stable pattern. They contain the memories of our people, our techniques for reading the emotional patterns of entire civilizations. The Empire wanted to use that knowledge to control other species. Kane was backing toward one of the market's exit tunnels, but security drones, now enhanced with Kytherian empathic sensors, had already identified him as a threat. There would be no escape for the traitor who had sold his own species' sanctuary to their ancient enemies. This isn't over, he snarled as the drones surrounded him. The Empire knows about you now. They'll send armies. Let them come, Ylira replied calmly. We are no longer hiding. As station security led Kane away, the market slowly began to return to normal. But everything had changed. The electronic systems now hummed with subtle empathic interfaces that could detect hostile intent. The data cores were broadcasting their contents to Kytherian survivors across the galaxy, rebuilding the network that the Empire had tried so hard to destroy. Captain Voss approached her carefully, his weathered face showing new respect. What happens now? Ylira looked out through the station's transparent dome at the stars beyond, where she could now sense her scattered people beginning to stir from decades of hiding. The network was growing stronger with each passing moment, and soon they would be ready to reclaim their place in the galaxy. Now we remember who we used to be, she said quietly. And we make sure that no one ever forgets why the Empire feared us. The small trinket dealer had revealed herself to be something far more dangerous, a guardian of ancient knowledge and the key to her people's resurrection. The Empire had sent a weapon to destroy her, but instead had awakened something they thought they had safely buried. The hunt was indeed beginning, but this time, the Kytherians would not be the prey.